This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. With Stuart Cameron and Robin Purdie.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast, looking at the top three divisions in Scottish Club Rugby, which means every week we'll be focusing on the 30 clubs from the Premiership, Nationals 1 and 2, hearing from the coaches ahead of their games tomorrow. And with me, as usual, is Robin Purdie. And last week, Robin, the National League teams got their season started with the Premiership clubs launching the week before. And let's go with the results to put everything into context, starting with the Premiership. GHA 13, Melrose 10, Glasgow Hawks 15, Currie 19, Heriot's 14, Ayr 48, Kelso 14, Hawick 10 and Selkirk 14, Watsonians 48. So 4 teams unbeaten: Ayr, Watsonians, Currie and GHA. 3 of them, no real surprise of course, with Ayr and Watsonians with bonus points in both games. But seeing GHA in there as newcomers to the Premiership, that's going to be a bit of a surprise for a lot of people, although the team of course went through last season totally unbeaten, but they're up a level, beating clubs like Hawick away and Melrose at home, so that's a brilliant start for them.
Oh, it sure is, Stuart, and it's thrown the cat among the pigeons, I would imagine, with some of the other clubs as well, with there being one down this year. You know, if you're one of the teams that are not potentially going to be in the playoffs, you're thinking, oh well, who's the promoted team? Are they going to be better or worse than us? And yeah, can't do any better than 2 wins from 2 away at Mansfield as well, and you know, against Melrose, who were coming in on the crest of a wave against Heriot. So all credit to GHA. Ayr, Watsonians, Currie, you'd expect them to be where they are, and you'll expect that for the rest of the season, no doubt. So it's been an interesting start. One thing that, you know, when you look at the results from last weekend, Stuart, only 2 teams scored more than 20 points. We don't often see that. I wonder if the weather's played its part there. There were a couple of close games in there, 3 close games. Good start to the season for some of the clubs, not so good for others. Some, not quite yet, with a wee bit to think about, but come 5 o'clock tomorrow, you don't want to be not from 3.
Of course, interesting as well, talk about the scores, all the home games. Heriot's got 14, Kelso got 14, Selkirk got 14, GHA 13 and Glasgow Hawks 15. So a 14 average right across the board for all the home matches.
Yeah, and it's low, isn't it? Like I say, I can only think, particularly this time of year, the weather's played its part there. When we normally see, higher scoring encounters than that. But yeah, all credit to Ayr, that again, statement win there. Heriots, they just go about their business. Heriots, of course, not as strong on the face of it as they were last season, but you still got to go there, and they were certainly stronger Heriots than they were the week before against Melrose. Watsonians very impressive at Selkirk.
And of course, Heriot's at the bottom of the table. We don't see that too often. But of course, Currie had 0 from 3 last season, and then went up, of course, throughout the season and managed to get into the playoffs. But Heriot's, of course, as we always remind people, they're the only team in Scottish rugby who have never been outside the top flight. Yeah,
and that's not going to change this season. They find themselves bottom of the pile at the moment. Only 2 games in, they've got enough high quality personnel there to get up and running shortly. They've had a tough start, Green Yards away, opening day of the season. Of course, Ayr come to town. That was a free hit for Heriot. So yeah, they'll start to come good at some point. They won't be down there all that long.
National 1 then was Edinburgh Accies 43, Gala 7, Gordonians 17, Glasgow Accies 67, Jed-Forest 21, Mar 40, Musselburgh 20, Biggar 13 and Stirling County 19, Boroughmuir 13. So wins for Glasgow Accies, Edinburgh Accies, Mar, Musselburgh and Stirling County. And last week we were both talking up Stirling County, but to be fair, they certainly didn't blow Boroughmuir away. In fact, they were behind with the last play of the match, and Boroughmuir got over the line to win at Bridge Hall. So that's raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah, it has, and that maybe says as much about Boroughmuir as it does about Stirling. I don't fancy Boroughmuir to be in the shake-up, to be the one down this season, Stuart. Stirling, they got the win at the end. The 3 relegated teams all got a win. Good win for that for Mar at Jed. Edinburgh Accies look like they've done a number on Gala there. Musselburgh, I think they'll be happy enough to get up and running with a win against Biggar. Biggar, always reasonably well drilled, but the standout result for me there is Glasgow Accies. We spoke last week about Gordonians coming up unknown quantity again. Lots of wins the season before. Accies, they've obviously went up there and done a real number. I think they'll be absolutely delighted by that, and some of the other teams again that are not necessarily got to be in the promotion shake-up will be looking at that result and maybe saying, okay, well, Gordonians didn't get off to that great a start, they hopefully might not be that good, and then that takes the pressure off us a wee bit in the lower reaches of the table.
National 2 results: Berwick 5, Falkirk 34, Dundee 51, Kirkcaldy 28, Highland 69, Howe 5 34, Newton Stewart 18, Stewmel 6, and Peebles 14, GHK 27. So wins there for Highland, Falkirk, Dundee, GHK and Newton Stewart, and a few surprises.
Yeah, and you see those score lines there, and that blows my theory about the weather playing a part.
As you say, Highland 69, Howe 5 34 went over the ton.
Yeah, it did. Good win for Highland. That again, bit of an early season statement. They came down, so they'll be pretty chuffed with that. Good win for Dundee. That as well. Another team that came down. They took a few beatings last season. Let's be honest, in National 1, a few hookings. So that's a good start for them. Really good win for Falkirk down at a place that's not easy to go. Scramerston, really good away win that. But again, probably the result of the round for me there is GHK at Peebles. Said last week, GHK always for me are a wee bit of an unknown quantity, but didn't see that result coming at the gate.
So that was last weekend. We now move on to tomorrow's games, and for the first time ever we've been able to round up all 30 clubs and get sound bites from all of them, which is a real thrill, and my thanks to them all for contributing to this podcast, and we look forward to working with all of them throughout the season. So let's begin with our commentary match. It's Melrose versus Ayr at the Greenyards, and I think we all thought that both teams would be unbeaten going into this one, but that wasn't the case. Let's hear from Ayr's Grant Anderson, head coach, and Melrose co-head coach Scott White.
So up at GHA, obviously things didn't go to plan. Way below performance. I think fair play to GHA. They played the conditions much better than us on Saturday. We had a few chances, but I unfortunately left them out on the pitch. So came back down the road with, I dare say, a point. Boys have turned up this week with a real bit between their teeth. I think you've got two ways it can go this week. You either knuckle down and get on with it, or you look at the damage they've done the first 2 weeks already in the season in terms of Ayr coming to town this week. So look, I think everybody knows Ayr are obviously kind of a class above everyone at the moment, just with the sheer experience that they've got from Super 6, and they've actually managed to keep the squad fairly close together. But I think this week it's all about us and controlling what we can control, and essentially turning up and backing up one another. This week I'll see Angus Weir unavailable due to previous engagements. Zen Swarshak obviously picked up an injury, picked up a wee niggle at the weekend, so pack will stay familiar to what it was last week. Elliot Ruffin will go up into middle row to pair Angus Runciman, and in the back row will be Ollie Furness. Xander McTaggart will come in at 7 and Rue Campbell will start at 8. Jack Dobie will be at 1, Ben McLean will be at 2, and then it'll just be what we do in and around the 3 jersey. And it's great to see a couple of youngsters. So Bubba Robinson played the first week against Heriot off the bench and was excellent. So was Ollie Anderson on Saturday. He came off the bench on Saturday and was good as well. So we've got a couple of options there just in terms of where we go. I think where we'll see a bit of a kind of reshuffle, if you like, will be within the back line. But it's great to have boys like Paddy Anderson will be back. Connor Spence is back this week. Sam Derrick's back this week. Thomas Brown may even feature off the bench this week as well. Just given where we are, we'll go back to a 5-2 split this week on the bench, and we've also got young Rory McAfee made available by Edinburgh Academy. So it's just we're finalising selection and what that looks like. Boys are really, really looking forward to the challenge ahead on Saturday in terms of Ayr. And it's about looking at ourselves after the performance last week. There's been a few harsh words said in terms of standards, especially after week 1. And I've said it for the first 2 weeks already. And the reality is you've got to have consistency performance in this league. And Saturday shows you, look, if you're below par, you'll get beat. So we've not got the players to have an off day. So we've had a few harsh words on Tuesday night with analysis. Great session, 15v15. Storm guys went up and played Haddington firsts as well on Saturday. So we've got guys pushing at the heels of these guys that are playing in the firsts every week. So there's great competition for places. It's a sellout on Saturday in terms of Ladies' Day on Saturday, so the club will be busy again in terms of it sold out. So it's important we get a performance right at home.
I was delighted with the performance on Saturday. The bus broke down, boys had to wait an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes on the bus. Then another bus came, and then we had to decant everything off. Some of the boys were standing outside at different pick-up points. We were then quite rushed getting through. The warm-up was quite rushed. So in terms of our kind of manner that we approached that game in, how it could have went and how it actually did go, and our ability to just stay in control of everything that we can control and then not really be bothered by anything else. I was really, really proud of that. So that was a massive plus for us from Saturday. I think our performance is much more what we would expect from ourselves. Hawks game we were really quite rusty, whereas last week against Heriot's things were done properly, let's say, and we played the way that we know we can. Don't get me wrong, still elements to work on, and given the conditions, we only had 6 handling errors trying to play the expansive game that we were playing in that game, so I was pleased with that. Again, we're still wrestling a little with fine margins of being fearless, but at the same time we need to ensure that we're not reckless. So I feel like in terms of turnovers conceded, we gave them 3 turnovers, which in my eyes were needless. So we had a look at that last night, and we got really good buy-in from the boys and understanding on when is the right time to try something and when is perhaps the wrong time to try something. And I think we've spent a lot of time pre-season and towards the tail end of last season just trying to simplify our rugby a wee bit. It doesn't need to be flashy or overcomplicated. Purdie will focus on doing the basics well, playing with depth, running hard lines, and then being able to execute our skills under pressure. And for about 90-95% of the game on Saturday, we did that very, very well. Set piece was outstanding. Our maul work was good. A few things to tidy up there, but our maul work was good. I was pleased with our defence. That's probably the best our defence has looked, and I feel like we're starting to get back to where we know we should be when you're forcing Heriots to throw the ball to their number 8, who then puts a grubber kick in down the touchline almost last play of the game to score their second try. I think that's the kind of mentality that we want. I think we had about 15 to 20 D sets before that, forcing them further and further away from our try line. So that's the kind of mentality that we want the boys to approach games with, that regardless of the time of the game or the scoreline, that we still have pride in our line and we're willing to put our bodies on the line. I was also really pleased with the people who came off the bench. I talk a lot about it's the full squad. It's 22 guys. Yes, everybody wants to start, but for us, everybody has a job to do. And if, regardless of starting or coming on, if they do their job well and have the impact that we want them to have, then it just adds to our performance. So I was really pleased with that. Our attention now turns to a different game down at Melrose. Obviously, we'll be on the 4G. So there's a potential for that game to be a bit faster and a bit looser. Melrose obviously lost to GHA. GHA will be a tough nut to crack at home. They're a really tight group of guys. And from looking at a little bit of the footage, I think they GHA'd them is what I would say there. They're quite feisty, GHA. They all stick up for each other. They're kind of in your face. They're quite aggressive in their mentality and how they go about things. So I think Melrose might have been lured into that trap. Obviously, conditions didn't help on Saturday. It was really quite poor. So I would be expecting a reaction from Melrose this Saturday. They'll probably want to build on their performance against Heriot's from round 1, albeit I think everybody knew that day that wasn't a fair reflection of Heriot's. Guys getting injured and younger guys on the pitch and some really important players missing that day for them. So I'm sure Whitey will be coming up with a strategy that he thinks works best against us. However, for me, we'll just be focusing on building on last week. Can we continue to push the performance in the right direction? Can we be accountable for our actions? And can we demand more from each other every single week? And that will be the focus going down to the Green Yards, which I'm sure will be a great day. It's our favourite away day. The boys have got a social planned like we did last year. So we're heading down there in positive spirits.
Not even broken buses can stop them at the moment, and the bad weather as well. So fair play to Ayr. Disruption there. And of course it disrupted us as well, didn't it, that late kick-off, because we went on air at 7 o'clock and they were still playing.
Yes, it did. It makes that performance all the more impressive, Stuart, because they're coming a long way anyway to go to Heriot's, and that would have been really disruptive. There's no two ways about it, and it was impressive. I'll come back to that in just a second. Looking at the game, first of all, from a spectacle point of view, I'm always a wee bit disappointed that Melrose didn't pick up 5 points at GHA last week, and that's taking nothing away from GHA, of course, nothing against them. But this would have been really hyped up, this game, if they were both coming in the maximum. As we thought they would have been. It would have been quite mouth-watering. But Melrose now, not their best performance last week, still got a back line that can do damage against anybody, but their forwards, my word, their forwards are going to have to go some tomorrow. They're really going to have to front up, and if Big Zen's not available, then that, we have to be honest and say that ain't going to help the cause. If it's a big old ask for young props to come in for him, but Paddy Anderson, that gives added depth in the back, and McAfee, if he comes in, plays a part, he's a good young player. Ayr, at what point do the superlatives run dry? That away win at Heriot, so the stuff that I caught for that, you've got the back five of that, the back five forwards, Bloodworth and Jackson and Melrose, McPherson, Brown and Sweeney there. At times it was like, they were like nightclub bouncers, getting rid of rowdy stragglers at the end of a night, just running about doing whatever they want, and then behind that you've got like Shedden and Orr and Stirrat, rugby players, good rugby players, but absolute bludgeons as well. So what it's going to take to stop Ayr this season, I do not know. They're just, to my mind, they're at the moment, and they'll possibly have a blip along the way, but let's be honest, they're a class apart. Really looking forward to this one tomorrow. Always look forward to seeing Ayr play in the flesh, and as Grant said there, what can Whitey and the likes of Chegg and what can they do what can they come up with to stop Ayr?
Prediction?
Yeah, away win, Stuart.
That's our commentary match tomorrow on Rugby Radio, starting at 2:30 all the way through till 5. Don't forget, we now have the 7 o'clock roundup show where we go over all the results and the tables, hear from the players and coaches as well. There'll be highlights on Borders Rugby TV tomorrow night and also on Monday on ITV. Next up, Currie versus Heriot. Let's hear from Heriot's head coach Bob McKillop, and first Currie's boss Mark Cairns.
So we're really looking forward to welcoming Heriot's to Millennium this week. Reflecting back on the Hawks game, we were really happy with the win, really happy that we got the points. But, there are areas we can improve. We felt that we weren't effective enough in the 22. We also had line-outs 5 metres out that we should have converted more of. But, a lot of that we have to give credit to Hawks for the defence. But that's something we've been working on this week. Looking at the Heriot's match itself, will be boosted by having Rhys Davies back, unavailable last week, and Ed Hasdell comes in for his first game of the season. Those are two guys that can really help get us on the front foot and are pretty good defensively as well. So it's great to have them back in the mix. Heriot's will be disappointed with the season so far. They've lost the last 2 games. We were 1-5 last year. And it's not a nice place to be, so they'll be looking to get their season on track. They've got the quality of players to do that for sure. They've got some really old heads in the forwards. The likes of Leishman, for example, is an outstanding player. You could see that from his try scored ahead last week, but he's also a very effective operator in the line-out, and they'll be looking for him to disrupt our ball there. In the backs, they've got some really good young talent coming through, and so we'll have to be really on our game to keep them out. And like I've said before, our defence is a big focus for us this year, and we'll be working really hard to stop them scoring, which is a real challenge. So looking forward to the match. We know how desperate they'll be, but we're at home, we're at Millennium. We should be really up for that as well. We didn't manage to beat them last year, and that's something that the boys want to address. We've got an opportunity to do that on Saturday.
So Currie at Millennium Park is the third game for us in a very, very hard opening sequence. We had Melrose away on the opening day, Ayr at home in the pouring rain last weekend. We've got Currie this weekend, and then we welcome Watsonians to Golden Acre a week on Saturday. So it's a pretty tough first 4 games for a new team and a young team. We're certainly hoping the weather will be a little bit better this week. Ayr are a very tough assignment for anyone. Very efficient, very powerful. I think they've added a new offload dimension to their game this year, which, if you weren't the opposing coach, is probably quite good to watch. But very, very tough for us. But we've looked at our own game, and we think that it's a collection of small things, small errors and small skill errors that are letting us down. And if you stack those small things, they can become big problems. We had a big focus this week on cutting out small, unforced errors. Over those first 2 games, we've already used 31 players. You can probably add another 3 to that for this weekend. So, quite a lot of turnover, but it does speak to the strength of the club. And when we look at the 22 for this week, 8 of them will be 20 or under, with Calum Jessup still the youngest at 17. Hugely impressed with his maturity on the back foot in terrible weather at Gainsdale last week. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Starting team will be very similar to last week, but Hamish MacArthur has been released by Edinburgh Academy to start at 9, which is very tough on Struan Tallock, who I thought was excellent off the bench on both sides of the ball last week. Hamish spent last Saturday standing in the rain at our turnstiles working at Goldenacre, so promotion from the turnstiles to the first 15 is probably a historic promotion for somebody. Yeah, I think one of the major improvements last week, and it remains a work in progress, was our line-out. I think against Melrose, our line-out was nowhere near acceptable. I think with Rory Leishman, who is a line-out master, coming back in, and with Elliot Young and Rory Jackson at hooker, that worked better for us last week. We can still work on cleaning up the delivery of the ball, but it did give us a source of possession. So, we're looking forward to this weekend. We know it'll be tough. It's always physical when Heriot's play Currie. They've got some great players and some great people in their team. Charlie Brett, Rhys Davis, Ryan Daly are guys that I'm very fond of through the Edinburgh district set up. And, I look forward to seeing the two Cairns brothers, Mark and Ben, before, during and after the game. So I'm sure it'll be a good game. Heriot's and Currie never lacks for a little bit of atmosphere. And Millennium Park is a challenging but exciting place to go. So we're looking forward to it.
I really love these insights, I have to say, from these guys who've been in the game for such a long time. And what a story there, from turnstile to first team.
Oh, yeah. Turnstile to turnover, you may say. I'll get my coat. But no, again, it's another game with a great look about it. Currie v Heriot's, two of last season's front runners. Bob mentioned 8 under 20 for Heriot, so there's clearly a changing of the guard there. Probably the same at Watsonians as well. Great for the future of both these clubs. Does it help them this season to realistically topple Ayr? Probably not. Yeah, good looking game. Harshaw being back, that's a big fillip for Currie. He's right up there with the Leishmans, the McPhersons, McNeill, Linton when he's fit. The best number 8s in the division. Heriot's, they had more back against Ayr than they had Melrose. Leishman, talismanic figure. That was a wonderful try. I thought it was a real piece of class from him. So yeah, sure to be a good game. Currie to share it.
Lots of youngsters coming in, as he mentioned there. I mean, not just at Heriot's, Watsonians we saw last week, and they seem to be fitting in pretty effortlessly as well. I mean, you mentioned Rory McAfee, who's going to be playing tomorrow for Melrose as well. Great to see these youngsters coming in and just slotting in.
Oh, brilliant, Stuart. I think it really brings something. I've seen a lot of them for Watsonians in the flesh last week, and I think, as Ian Hurd said in commentary, when they're warm, when you're looking at the warm up from afar, you can't pick them out. So what does that tell you? These are fully grown men, in albeit they're young lads. So yeah, I think that's the luxury the likes of Heriot's and Watsonians have. They do geographically, and because of their history, they in their links they have the pick of the best youngsters coming through, and that's just the way it is. But I think it's a really good thing. As a spectator, it enthuses me to see good young players coming through to go and slot in there with some of the older heads. So yeah, sure it'll be a good one. Like I say, Currie just to share it.
GHA v Kelso next. GHA with wins already at Hawick and at home to Melrose. Now they want their third border scalp in a row against Kelso. Neill Hinnigan is Kelso's Director of Rugby. Calum Forrester is head coach at GHA.
We're obviously delighted with the results from the opening 2 weekends. Firstly down to get the win down away at Hawick, and ultimately to back that up against Melrose at the weekend. The hugely pleasing thing was for this group that despite being down with the last play of the game and building pressure down in the Melrose 22, there was ultimately that self-belief with this group of men and the squad that we have that we could carry on and win that game. So it was great to get results within that number of areas for us still to work on, which we've done so this week, and we know we'll need to be up at our best against a very experienced Kelso team. We've got a very physical pack, and we need to meet that challenge head on again this weekend. And ultimately for this group, it's to back up the performance we had and take it to Kelso this weekend.
Last week we had a good win against Hawick. Took us around 60 minutes to really get going in the game. We had a lot of pressure on us first half, playing into the wind, and Hawick really dominated possession. They had a few good chances as well, but our defence was really good on the day, and we managed to keep the points down to 10 in the first half, and then second half we kicked on and got the 2 tries. Maybe should have had a couple more. So yeah, good win. Boys are feeling a bit more comfortable now that we've managed to get the season up and running. They've worked hard at training. We've had some really good numbers there, and there's lots to work on, but we feel that, you know, there's a lot more to come. GHA away is a really difficult task. You know, we go into this one as huge underdogs, really, given that GHA haven't lost a game there for nearly, 18 months, I think. I don't think they've lost a game at home for a long time. I know they're at least 20-odd games unbeaten in general. So, I mean, that's a task that's ahead of us, but what that means is it's an opportunity for us to go and do something special, and that's to go to GHA and get a result. The players are thinking that they can do that, and I think if we can improve on the last 20-30 minutes that we gave against Hawick, there's a good chance we could get something at GHA. So yeah, onwards to Glasgow for one of our longer away trips of the season, and getting on a bus together again and enjoying each other's company should hopefully be something that we can build on as well, and keep the team spirit coming, because for a small town like Kelso, this is a really big thing to have as a team ethos, and I think that challenges like this are the ones we need right now. So hopefully Saturday's a good day for us.
I just mentioned youngsters are fitting in nicely to the Premiership. GHA fitting very nicely into the Premiership themselves.
Oh, they most certainly are, Stuart. They're in dreamland after that start, let's be honest, because I don't think you would have caused too much offence if you'd sat here pre-season and said, maybe don't fancy GHA to have that many points after 2 games, maybe a bonus point here or there, but riding high 9 points, that makes it very tough for Kelso. GHA can go to Hawick and win. If they can beat Melrose at home, then they can beat Kelso at home, absolutely. But I can also see Kelso winning this game as well. I find it really, really difficult to pick a winner here. If GHA win, if Glasgow Hawks lose at Watsonians and one of Selkirk or Hawick lose, Currie beat Heriot's, GHA are on minimally 13 points, and 3 of those teams are on not a lot. GHA, if they win on Saturday, to be safe.
That's quite a prediction.
After 3 games.
And do you think they will do it?
They possibly will share it, but like I say, I would not be at all surprised if Kelso won either. That's very much sitting on the fence, I get it, but GHA to share it.
Yeah, and interesting enough, GHA, of course, have Selkirk next week, so that could be all 4 Borders teams under their belt. They'll certainly be looking at that. Oh,
yeah, and I think the Borders teams, in all honesty, would be looking at the games this season, looking at the fixture as pre-season and saying, well, what games are we realistically going to win? What can we target? And I think most of them hand on heart will look to GHA.
Well, match 4 is a border derby in the Premiership. It's Hawick versus Selkirk. Both head coaches get to have their say now. Selkirk's Sesh Henderson, and first the Greens' Graham Hogg.
As a group, we felt like we taken some real positive steps forward last week at Kelso. Although the result didn't go our way in the end, we felt our performance for 95% of the game was a lot better than it was the week before against GHA. Ultimately, though, we're in the results business, and it was disappointing not to come away with all 4 points for being in the lead for the majority of the game. Obviously, it was a pretty old-school border derby with 2 teams going full on at it. Conditions obviously dictated that game, and with Kelso having the conditions in their favour in the second half, they piled pressure on us towards the end of that for about 70 minutes onwards, and obviously got the positive result at the end. But can't say I was too disheartened. As I said, we definitely taken steps forward, and this young group that we've got this season definitely learned, and we move forward into this week. Saturday is obviously now a must-win game against another border rival in Selkirk. We're back at Mansfield Park, and we're certainly looking to put on a better performance than we did first showing of the season at home. So, yeah, we're looking forward to what we can do and where we can go this week. Injury-wise, obviously, it was unfortunate to lose Kyle Brunton on the first game of the season, but he comes back in contention to play this week. I seem to say the same thing week in, week out with this, but we've got obviously another injury, and the main one being Kirk Ford, probably looking like a ruptured Achilles and out for the season, which is bad news for us, but obviously more devastating for Kirk. Kirk's a really popular guy within our environment, and he's one of those players we're probably not going to realise how good he is until he's not there. His rugby IQ's second to none, and just a real calming influence, but gives younger boys an opportunity to step up, and we're looking forward to seeing how they go this week.
Last week's score was hard to take, against Watson's side, a good Watson's side at that, and to keep them out to that score at half time. I think it was about 12-7, then take control of the game the first 10 minutes, second half. Then we went in the lead, but we couldn't consolidate that. A couple of mistakes, give them 2 easy scores. Then that was compounded by losing a couple of players injured. Then they score a couple later on to take the game away for us. So we've got to take it on the chin. We've got to learn from it really quickly and learn to the point where we get better as a squad. But the good news is that the injuries that we did have should be okay for this week. So we've got a full, hopefully close to a full strength squad with Corey Tate, Josh Welsh, James Bett all available this week. Another tough day at the office down at Hawick, and that's going to be hard. That'll be a hard shift, 80 minutes. We're going to be at our best. We'll have to be better in all aspects of the game to come away with something. But look, that's what our aim is, to work hard, get prepared, and go to Hawick, give it, the best 80 minutes we've had this season. And if we do that, then we'll go get something out of the game. But we've got to be, the concentration there, discipline's got to be there for 80 minutes to achieve that, because it's a tough place to go. Neill got a win away at Kelso last weekend, so they'll be hoping to get 4 points or 5 points off us on Saturday, but we'll be there making sure as much as we can that doesn't happen, the points go the other way.
Both teams without a win this season so far, and Selkirk traditionally performed pretty well at Mansfield Park.
Yeah, they seem to do. They were one of the very few clubs that gave Hawick something to think about, at least 2-3 years ago when Hawick were dominant. Again, like the game before, Stuart, monumentally difficult to call this one. First of all, there's more to this than predicting results. Kirkford, a word for him. Hope he makes a speedy and full recovery. That sounded like a bad one. He is a wonderful player and has been for many years, and for him to be out for what looks like the season this early in the season, a bit like Finlay Sinclair on the first day, it's devastating, to be honest. So that that's the first thing to say there. From a rugby perspective, it's the last thing Hawick need to lose him. As Graham alluded to there, he's just a class act. He's their goal kicker. He's accurate in that regard, and he just plays with such composure. He's unflappable. So yeah, that's a huge blow. But it sounds like they got stuck right in down at Kelso. They've got some really inexperienced lads there, and that's to their credit. They're throwing these young boys in. I believe new scrum half that's arrived, he seems to be a player, so that should help. As for Selkirk, who's back and who's not out after being injured last week is just huge. Corey Tate being back, it's hard to over exaggerate how big that is. They've really missed him the first 2 weeks. I feared for Calum Anderson when he went off, when I seen him sort of holding the arm. He was their best player on Saturday. That left foot is a wand, but he's got a brilliant running game as well. So the fact that by the sounds of things he's going to be there, that's huge for Selkirk. Josh Welsh being back as well, that's for the first time this season. So yeah, again though, they've got an inexperienced bench like Hawick, but those frontliners coming back, so difficult to cost you, but I can just see Selkirk shading what could be maybe a low scoring affair.
Well, the final game tomorrow in the Premiership is Watsonians versus Glasgow Hawks, with the Bill McLaren Shield on the line as well. Hawks did a lot better last week, getting very close to upsetting Currie. Head coach for Hawks is Phil Smith, and one of Watsonians' coaching team is Mike Kerr.
Last week, pretty pleased with the way we attacked. We were quite happy with the sort of pace we managed to put onto the ball and how we managed to stress Selkirk on the outside and put them under real pressure. And yeah, we were able to generate some pretty quick ball through some good ruck speed and then get into those edges. So we were really pleased with our intent to attack and our speed onto ball. And obviously to score 48 points at Selkirk, it's always a tough place to go. And I know they're maybe missing a few guys at the minute, probably caught them at a good time. But we're really pleased with how we approach the game in terms of our attack. Our backline seemed to be getting used to each other and clicking, which is great. Obviously, I've said it before, a couple of young guys in it, but the experienced heads are really helping them as well. A pretty special day for Daniel Kelly at 17 years old to score 4 tries and to look a real threat every time he had the ball. But I think the work from Andy McLean, Harry Clark in particular, and Lomond on his unselfish lines that he ran, I think we were a real threat all day in attack. Our forwards gave us real good ball again, lots of good parity up front against Selkirk and probably pretty dominant in certain areas, especially around the breakdown. But yeah, a really pleasing day for us down in Selkirk. They'll take points off a lot of teams down there. So to come away with 5 points and to score the amount of tries that we did, we were really pleased. Moving into this week against Hawks, Phil Smith at Hawks, he's a quality club coach. You'll have them really well drilled. You'll have some good innovative ideas. Obviously know Phil well from schoolboy scene and the amount of years that he's coached at Heriot and stuff. And they've obviously got some really good guys in the background there as well who'll be able to add that sort of professional expertise just out the game. So yeah, Saturday's going to be a pretty tough assignment. We'll be looking to approach the game in the same sort of way, trying to put some air on the ball and trying to play on those outside edges again and stretch teams with the pace and the skill level that we've got. Last year it was a real tough game at Marside. They probably came out on the wrong side of a few referees' decisions. They're not going to be in any pushover, and obviously a disappointing result last week against Currie, which it looked like they maybe should have won. And obviously Ayr away kind of speaks for itself at times, doesn't it? But they'll have a point to prove after 2 losses, and I'm sure they'll be coming through to Marside well coached, well drilled, and put on a good show against us. So we're going to have to make sure we're on it from minute 1 on Saturday. In terms of team selection, we are largely unchanged this weekend. Louis Ball was meant to play last week, but he wasn't well, which is a wee bit of a concern. There is a wee bug going around most places at the minute, but he is recovered. He trained well on Tuesday, so he'll come into the mix. Harry Fisher comes back into the mix, having again not felt great last week, so he'll be back involved. Martin McGinley should be back this week, so again, more numbers for us to choose from, but I think our squad will be relatively unchanged. And as I say, just trying to build connections and keep that cohesion going.
We have had a positive week this week, and we realised we're moving into game 3 in a row after having had champions against third place team, now the second place team. So we've regrouped, we're looking forward to it, hopefully a bit drier than last week, and we will see where we go for another week.
Well, you saw Watsonians last weekend put 48 points on Selkirk at Philip Hogg, and with home advantage they must certainly start as favourites, but that was a good performance for Hawks last week.
Oh yeah, I think so. Stuart, this Phil touched on there, can't get much tougher start than Ayr, Currie and Watsonians, so it's really hard to read into what Hawks so far are all about this season. You can't read too much into Ayr away. There'll be heavier defeats than that for some teams down there this season. I think you can read into nearly beating Currie at home. That puts you in the no mugs category if you can just about see Currie off. But yeah, tough game for them at Watsonians, because Watsonians were uber impressive. I thought I was really impressed by them on Saturday there. Young lads, 5 18-year-olds and a 17-year-old in the squad. The 17-year-old scored 4 tries. You thought, how are they going to cope without Baggett? Well, Andy McLean's come in from Glasgow Hawks, ironically enough, and he was man of the match in a game where somebody scored 4 tries, so that tells you how he played. They've got a gnarly front row. They've got Van Niekerk in there, and they've got 3 or 4 boys coming back to compete for that squad as well. But yeah, so impressed by the young lads. Harry Clark in the centre, he looked a class act. Got a lot of help from Loman McPherson playing in a 13 jersey. He's a quality operator. And yeah, Dan Kelly, 17-year-old, late call-up, scored 4 to take him to 5 for this season, 2 games, 17-year-old.
Real exciting stuff, seeing all these youngsters doing so well. Well, that's the Premiership sorted. After the break, we'll take a look at National Leagues 1 and 2.
This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. Brought to you by Rugby Radio.
Borders water, Borders barley and Borders people. That's what makes the Borders Distillery. Working exclusively with local farmers, the Borders Distillery is bringing whisky making back to the region. Our award-winning distillery is open to everyone, where you can meet the people behind the scenes, explore our wash house and shop quality local products. Tour your local distillery and discover the spirit of the Borders. Full details at thebordersdistillery.com. Always enjoy our spirit responsibly. Under 18s must be accompanied by an adult when visiting the Borders Distillery.
If you're hearing this, then so could your customers. To advertise on Rugby Radio's 2 Saturday shows and also the Scottish Club Rugby podcast, get in touch via our website at rugbyradio.co.uk. Advertising and sponsorship packages are available for the whole season or on a monthly basis. Help support what we do to promote club rugby in Scotland using our contact page at rugbyradio.co.uk.
Based in Gala Shields but covering the whole region and beyond, Borders Mortgage Hub is your one-stop shop for all things mortgage related in the Borders. Visit us at bordersmortgagehub.com or call us on 01896 807 008. That's 01896 807 008. Borders Mortgage Hub. Mortgages for the Borders in the Borders.
Borders Mortgage Hub. With over 30 years' experience in print and embroidery, BE Uniforms are one of Scotland's leading rugby teamwear specialists. We currently supply many great clubs across Scotland and the north of England, offering brands such as Adidas, Macron, Canterbury and BE Sport. We have a specialist teamwear team who collectively have over 60 years' experience in the trade, delivering quality teamwear and finding solutions to the challenges out there. If your club is looking for a new supplier and would like to know more, get all the details at BE Uniforms beuniforms.co.uk, proud sponsors of Rugby Radio and Borders Rugby TV. BE Uniforms, your identity is our purpose.
This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. Brought to you by Rugby Radio.
Well, let's move into the National Leagues then, and National 1 starting with Biggar versus Jed-Forest. Jed new coach is Michael Harshaw and Biggar's man in charge, Craig Borthwick.
We've done a fair bit of look over Jed and stuff like that, and you look down through that team sheet, there's still a lot of familiar names that have played down at Jed for a long time. We feel that, that they've got a lot of maybe youngsters coming through as well, but when you've got those senior names and stuff like that have played a lot of rugby, it always stands you in good stead. They're a very, very dangerous side. They scored a lot of points late on against Mar last week, so they'll be looking to build on that and get a bit, head of steam going fairly early in the game. I think from our side, a lot of the stuff that we done last week was very good. I was very happy with it, which, obviously sounds a bit short, obviously, in terms that we didn't win the game. I think looking back in it, for the amount of ball that we had in that second half, I think we should have scored more points, but that's down to us. That's that's stuff that we can control. Give away sort of silly penalties last week, which has cost us in the end, because we've not been able to hold that pressure for that much longer and put Musselburgh under a real bit of pressure. So I feel that if we can do that and sharpen up on the things that we can get right and worry about the stuff that we're controlling on and off the ball, and that'll stand us in good stead. Selection-wise this week, we should be fairly similar to where we were last week. I don't see too many changes happening. For a coaching sort of side of things, you want to get that bit of unity early on in the season, that these boys are working together for big parts of the season, which obviously, it makes everything that much easier when you've played a good few games round about everybody, because there is new faces dripped in there. So again, these boys have had a bit of rugby under their belt, but all in all, it takes a wee while to actually bed everything in and stuff like that. So the more times you can get the same name on the team sheet, the better. We're expecting Jed to come out firing. They scored a lot of points late on against Mar last week, which they'll be looking to build off of. But again, it's all about us. Let's get the stuff right that we can get right, and hopefully we come out on Saturday night that we're the right end of the result this week, after a positive start against Musselburgh last week. But again, it's something that we only got 1 point out of, not 4 or 5. So me being me, it's unless we're winning, then I can't stand here with a smile on my face, because there's still stuff to be working on.
Jed-Forest have a trip to Biggar at the weekend, and after the close game at Musselburgh, we're expecting another physical encounter. We hope to be able to add to our forwards with the return of Jamie Ferguson. The back should be similar to last week, although Robbie Shearer Gibb missing out through injury. We weren't that far off Mar last week, and the team are really looking forward to improving where we came up short.
The new head coach of Jed-Forest there, that's Michael Harshaw. Before that, Craig Borthwick. And congratulations to Craig and his good lady on their new addition this week. So many congratulations to you both. Robin, Biggar versus Jed.
Yeah, this game last season, Jed nearly won up there. I think they were 20 odd points up at half time. They raced off to a flying start, then Biggar came back to them. Probably fancy Biggar to shade it, Stuart, if I'm being honest. Jed coming off a 40 points loss at home, and Biggar looked like they went all okay at relegated Musselburgh. So, but I think a lot when you go to Biggar depends on the weather. If it's if it's wet and it's an arm wrestle, and you fancy Biggar against most. But if it's a dry day and Jed can give it some air, then they should be competitive.
Next up, National 1, it's Boroughmuir versus Musselburgh. A narrow defeat for Muir at Stirling and a win for Musselburgh at home to Biggar last week. Musselburgh's head coach is Andrew Clark, but first we can hear from Boroughmuir's Director of Rugby, Neill Wood.
Really looking forward to Musselburgh coming along. They had a good win last week against a stuffy Biggar side. We were pretty much disappointed in the way that the game finished last week up at Stirling, leading 13-12. Last play of the game. Decision didn't go our way last weekend, so we're hoping to rectify this weekend. It's been a good week's training. Notable performances last week with Sam Webster getting man of the match. Some debuts also for Alex Boulder and Murray Armstrong and George Stevens. So this week, pretty much a settled side. A couple of returning players coming back. Josh Chapman in the back row. Will Lockhart coming back on the bench. And Hayden Leach returning from holiday. Pretty much a settled squad going out. I think Musselburgh were expecting a hard game up front from them. Our guys stepped up last week, against the likes of WP Neill playing for Stirling. So I'm hoping that Musselburgh don't turn up with any surprises with ex-internationalists. But yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully we will get off to a winning start at home.
Last weekend we played some great stuff in the early stages. Credit to Biggar, they turned it around and they really pushed us, and the game could have went either way in the end. This week Boroughmuir will be a different challenge. It's a club with a great history of Premiership and Scottish Cup titles. I know Stevie Leckie will have his players well drilled for the weekend. We really look forward to this challenge.
Well, this has all the ingredients of a pretty good competitive match. Neill, taken aback a little bit by the appearance of WP Neill. There's no internationals coming in from Musselburgh.
No, I don't think so, and it was well enough documented. WP Neill, I think that was one of the reasons that so many people, myself included, were tipping Stirling so heavily this season, but that could have went right out the window at 5 o'clock last Saturday, because by the sounds of things Boroughmuir have been remarkably competitive up there, and they seem disappointed not to have won it, so that tells us what they're potentially going to be about this season. So it's going to be a tough trip across the city for Musselburgh, and I think the home factor could just come into this one, Stuart, and I fancy Boroughmuir to shade this one.
Match number 3 is Gala versus Stirling County. Gala, always competitive at Netherdale, ran Stirling close last season, you'll recall. Craig Jackson used to be a coach at Gala. He's now in charge at Stirling, while head coach of the Maroons is Ewen Robbie.
Travelled up to Edinburgh on Saturday, and first half was not too bad with the scoreline. Actually looking at the game, we had a couple of opportunities to build some pressure in Aki's 22, and we just couldn't get any continuity going, more so down to our own accuracies as opposed to anything else. But we went into the break 12-7 down, tackled really hard and just kept our defence moving in that first half. The second half kind of splintered a wee bit. We actually started with possession of ball, set piece sometimes just up at the halfway line, and then it would turn over, and Akis were good at converting territory into points. A bit harder second half, but there was no shortage of effort. Still working on a few things structure wise, so we just have to keep patience and keep building things. Shout out to Hamish Segi, who is actually still used to play Wanderers rugby and who made his National League debut for Gala at the weekend. Really good, one to watch for the future. Moving on to this week, it doesn't get any easier. Stirling County travelling down to us. They had a tightish win against Boroughmuir. Boroughmuir played well against them, but they're a big pack, they've got WP Neill in that scrum as well, just to add a wee bit more oomph, should we say. They're coming down to Netherdale, and we have to have a bit of confidence in how we performed against them last year. First game at home for the season. Unfortunately, we could be without Fraser Wilson and Jack Eason, who picked up knocks at the weekend. It will be a really big challenge, but we're hoping that our home form continues this year that we had last year, and we just have to get down and get all guns blazing. There'll be big guys. We'll need to chop low, shape up really well in defence, and Craig's been looking at things with attack this week, and just we have to get those things on the pitch, keep looking to progress.
Big game this weekend, going down to Netherdale. Didn't lose many at home last year at all, so we know we have to be really, really accurate and around what we're doing. So it's an exciting week to bounce back. A win last weekend, but it was a bit sticky with the weather. We're already a few injuries down, so it's how we kind of best utilise our squad. We're fortunate enough to have a very strong squad, so comfortable enough that whoever steps in will do the job. Hopefully Marius will step in this week. We're back down at Netherdale. There's a young, exciting second row 6, Finlay Bartlett, getting a shot. Also backing up last week's performances with Sean Gold and Logan Gray, Harry Henderson and Ramsey in the forwards. I thought they were outstanding last week. We'll be very similar in the back line, not too much change. Probably start Sean Kennedy will start bringing some experience going down to the team will be pretty similar to that started last week.
Craig Jackson doing his impression of a Dalek, I think there. Wasn't the best quality of audio, but I hope we got the message there. Last season, of course, Gala were very good at home, but not great on the road, and last weekend they crumpled in the second half to Embrackis, but Stirling will have had a wake-up call last week by Boroughmuir, who, of course, as we've just discussed, nearly turned them over. What do you reckon on this one?
Well, I was at this game last season, Stuart, and it was an absolute joy to behold. Gala came very, very close to putting them away just before a couple of bits of brilliance, ex-professional brilliance by Glenn Bryce. Doug Stirling out the hole they were in, but WP now, Glenn Bryce still there, Sean Kennedy by the sounds of things is going to start, the ex-Glasgow professional, so Stirling awash with depth by the sounds of things. Big Marius used to really enjoy him in a Gala jersey, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. back to there. But yeah, a really tough start to the season for Gala. Accies, Edinburgh Accies away, Stirling home doesn't get much tougher, and if Wilson's out, that's a blow. He's one of their bigger lumps in the forwards there. So yeah, tough game for Gala this. The names on the team sheet for Stirling would suggest a Stirling victory.
Battle of the Accies next, and this is really intriguing. Glasgow Accies v Edinburgh Accies both posted big wins last weekend. Edinburgh Accies interim head coach is Graham Bonner. We can hear from him right after Glasgow Accies boss Ryan Grant.
Great start to the season for us last week up at Gordonians. To head away up there and score 67 points was a great achievement, and the boys should all be very proud of themselves, especially our 6 debutants. Young guys that have just kind of broken into the squad, 18, 19-year-old guys, really put their hands up. So selection this week will be tough. However, completely different prospect. Edinburgh Accies coming down from the Premiership will be a much bigger, a much more physical outfit, and we'll have different obstacles to contend with. But we're excited for it. We're looking forward to it, and it'll be good to mark a win for our first home game of the season.
Last Saturday we had a good win against Gala. This week we face Glasgow Accies, who also had a convincing win last week. New Anniesland is always a pleasant place to visit, and we're looking forward to the challenge there. Our pack remains unchanged, but there is one change in the backs, where the experienced Vinnie Hart comes in at fullback. David Braithwaite moves to the wing. Our bench is also strengthened with the inclusion of Connor Allen, son of former Scotland and South Africa hooker John Allen, and Ross Cadzo, a talented halfback who has just returned from playing in Australia. We're very much looking forward to maintaining our performance levels this week and hopefully get a win at New Anniesland.
It's hard to gauge how strong both teams were last week, but putting them both together, we'll get a few answers.
Oh yeah, I think it's the makings of a great game. This Accies are Glasgow Accies. I'm calling. I can't say Accies in this. Glasgow Accies have sort of flown under the radar a bit into this season, if you know what I mean, because let's not forget they were towards the top of the table, but we've not spoken about them that much because Marv came down and Edinburgh Accies have down, and not really spoken about them as genuine title contenders. But yeah, I think they'll be absolutely delighted with their start, and they could go about their business this season. Ryan Grant's there, Rory Jackson, both involved in the spirits industry, and incidentally I'm sure they would have raised the dram last Saturday after that convincing win. But Edinburgh Accies is a different proposition, not been plundered that much in terms of personnel, having been relegated. So if it had been at Rayburn Place, Stuart, I would have fancied Accies to shade it back.
Which one?
Edinburgh. I can't call this one.
You're sitting on the fence. Well, up next is Mar versus Gordonians. Gordonians, the new kids on the block as far as National 1 is concerned. Up from the second division, which they won. A big home defeat for them at home to Glasgow Accies, and they have to travel now to Mar, which is no easy fixture at all. I've been there many a time, very partisan, great crowd at Mar, and Gordonians head coach is Rory Riddle. But let's get the thoughts of Mar's man in charge, and that's Kenny Diffenthal.
We want to keep the momentum going off our win against Jed last week, so we've worked quite a lot on ourselves this week. We look forward to welcoming Gordonians to Fullerton and taking nothing for granted. They will want to right the wrongs from their opening game. Every game is a new challenge for us, so we're fully focused on this week and this week only.
We are looking to bounce back in a big way after last week's performance. There wasn't a single facet of the game that we weren't outplayed in, and we know we will have to be significantly better than what we showed to take anything home from Mar. Not an easy start to the season, but you have to play these teams either way, and I, for one, certainly would rather go to Mar this weekend than at some point in December. With regards to our team, we welcome back Vice-Captain Josh Andrews straight in at fly half. He was offshore working last weekend, so we hope that he'll significantly add to our attacking and kicking game from 10. We lost Dan Smith and Liam Dreeland to injuries last weekend, and we hope they aren't too severe, so we've got 2 promotions from the bench. Harry Faulkner goes straight in at hooker, and Jack Mayer goes into the second row. We're looking for a better performance this week. There's no doubt we got it wrong last Saturday, but we get to go again against high-level opposition, which is what is so exciting about this league. We know we have to go down tomorrow and score tries in order to take something home from the game. The boys know exactly what I expect from them on both sides of the ball, but specifically offensively, so I'm actually expecting it to be a cracking game, and I'm really looking forward to it.
And I think it's really good on this podcast hearing the clubs that we haven't covered before and new players coming into the mix, etc. By the end of the season, I think we'll all be experts.
Yeah, well, here's hoping, because as it stands at the moment, I have to be honest, don't know all that much about Gordonians. What I do know is there's an awful lot of geography between Aberdeen and Troon. That's a long old trek. And Mar look like they've been massively impressive. Or certainly on paper, that looks like a really impressive result to me at Riverside last week. Always a wee bit of an unknown when you get relegated, because who's going to leave and go back up to the Prem, etc. So that was really impressive. Looks like a free hit, this, in all honesty, for Gordonians, Stuart. And I think if they head back up the road with anything, that'll be pretty much a job well done.
Well, into National 2 now we go, and we begin with a tasty-looking battle between Falkirk and Highland, and that's going to be taking place at Sunnyside. So both big wins on the first day of the season. Highland's leading man at Canal Park is David Carson. We'll hear from him shortly, but first, new Falkirk head coach Graham Simpson.
Looking back to last week, 2 great results for the club. First of all, the seconds, going over to Kinross in a really horrible conditions with a restricted squad. To come away with that result was fantastic. Really, really proud of what they did. The first going down to Berwick, another great result for Falkirk. Historically, somewhere they really struggle to go and get a good result. So to come away 29 points in front was fantastic, and I was really, really happy with how we performed. We managed the game well in terms of field position and took our moments when we had the chance to attack, which was great. Still room to grow within that performance as well. So really looking forward to kind of fulfilling our potential there. Looking forward to the weekend coming. Highland coming down the road. That's obviously going to be a really tough fixture. They've done well week 1 against Howe at home. So we know the challenges that we've got to face, and we know the sort of strengths they're going to bring. For us, we're going to focus on ourselves, do what we are going to try and do, how we want to play rugby. And I think we control the factors we can control. I don't see why the boys can't get the result that they want. So really looking forward to seeing them try and achieve that goal. For the second 15, similar task on their hands against Perth in the Caledonia fixture. So it should be a really good weekend for Falkirk Rugby Club. We've got 16s and 18s at home, seconds and firsts at home. Really looking forward to putting on a good clubland display over at Falkirk this weekend. So team news wise, we're reasonably unchanged. The back line's going to be the same. They played really well down at Berwick, so no real reason to mix anything up there. And the forwards, I've got one change in the front row. Aaron Hayne coming in at loose head, and Serafini going to be starting at tight head this time. We're looking at moving McKenna back to the back row. Just a change through availability, no other reason. So, it's the squad's settled, and that's hopefully going to pay dividends at the end of the Highland fixture.
Yeah, we were delighted to get our league campaign off to a winning start on Saturday against Howe Fife. 5 points at home is always a good start. And I was just delighted the way the running rugby we played and the attack play was really, really good. I was delighted for our new backs coach, Rory Carson, who's really got the backs firing this year, and they're running some great tries. Obviously the disappointing part was we shipped 34 points at home. So the big work on is to tighten up our defence, so to try and shut teams down and not leak so many tries. This week, we're heading down to Falkirk, who had a great away win down at Berwick last week, so they'll be very buoyed by that. And we've certainly challenged the players. We found it very difficult last season to win on the road, but we've challenged the players this year to really get the mindset right, and let's go down and try and get some victories. So if our backs can fire like they did last week, and the forwards can provide some good quick ball, I would hope we can come up the road with an away win, which would be a good start to the season.
Well, Highland have never been great travellers. They're trying to rectify that, while Falkirk looking in good shape again this year and with home advantage.
I don't think Highland will find it quite as difficult in this division from a travelling perspective. Falkirk's not going to be probably their longest trip of the season here. They're all long trips, but it's not going to be that long compared to some. Really good start for both. Really impressive. Falkirk at Berwick last week, my word, didn't see that scoreline coming. But Highland, notice they've got the likes of Rory Knott playing there now. He's proven at a higher level. Game of the day this for me in this division, Stuart. Be a tight one either way.
Well, we were speculating last week on the podcast about how strong GHK would be this season, and judging by the fact that they were 27-0 up at Peebles, I think we got our answer. They've got home advantage tomorrow against Newton Stewart, who also won at home last week against Stew Mel. So let's get news from both camps. Newton Stewart's head coach is Nick Lloyd, and GHK's Cammy Little.
Encouraging start to the season at the Gates last week after a pretty fragmented pre-season with students away, players on holiday and such. So Peebles away first up was the hardest test we could have landed in that division. So to come away with 5 points was really pleasing. We've got Newton Stewart at Anniesland this week, and after suffering a heavy defeat down there at the end of last season, we need to bring the same intensity as last week to compete with them. Newton Stewart have got a big, tough pack. However, they like to play high-tempo, pretty expansive rugby. We'll look to improve on last week's good start by cutting down on a few of the unforced errors that we made. We've got to work hard on our defensive shape, and we'll try to play with a bit of pace ourselves. We've had some really good games against each other in the past few years, so hopefully this one will be another.
We're coming off the back of a really satisfying win over Stu Mel, and GHK seem to have an outstanding win over Peebles. Obviously, it'll be very different to the, biblical conditions that we faced last weekend, and I think that'll probably suit both teams. Squad-wise, we've got some unavailability and a few injury checks that are ongoing, but thankfully this year we've got some depth in the squad, so we should be able to deal with that. In the pack, we welcome back Ben McMeekin, who joins his brother James in the second row. Ben was away overseas all of last year. Former captain Liam Brawls, he's going to make his long-awaited return at tight head after missing most of the season with injury. And another stalwart in Mark Craig returns on the bench. And the backs, depending on a late fitness check, we may have Wilson Sloan back. Wilson was injured for most of last season, and otherwise we're largely unchanged. Pleasingly, Mark McCormick is working back to full fitness, and he'll again come off the bench. He was hugely influential last week. In fact, as was our entire bench, as the team managed to outscore Stu Mel 13-3 in the second half, running into gale force winds. GHK, they're a team that we greatly respect. They're really well coached. They've got very efficient forwards and dangerous backs, so we certainly know we'll need to bring our A game. We're really looking forward to the clash. We know them well. We've got similar styles, and it's always a good spectacle when we meet. It's actually our closest away game. It's only 2.5 hours down the road. So, again, I guess we'll know a lot more about ourselves and the league after this match.
Nick Lloyd saying they have the luxury of their closest away match this season, all of 2.5 hours, and puts things into perspective. Some of our local derbies here in the Borders.
Oh, you've just taken the words right out of my mouth, Stuart. You consider Melrose v Selkirk or Gala v Melrose or something like that. They're 10 minutes away. So that does really put it into perspective. 2.5 hours is your quickest, my word. Great to hear McCormick is coming back. Really rate him as a player. Seen him play for Glasgow in the Inter-District, so that's good for them. But brilliant win, probably result of the day in that division at least. Last week, GHK, unknown quantity. For me, always really good win at Peebles. Didn't see it coming. And Cammy Little as well. That's a blast from the past. What a good player he was back in the day.
So How of Fife is next. They're playing Peebles in National 2, both looking for their first win tomorrow. We shall hear from Peebles head coach Graham Patterson, and it's a welcome back to Scottish Rugby for former Falkirk coach and now in charge with How of Fife, and it's Neill Lear.
Looking back to last weekend's game against Highland, they were very well-deserved winners. Not only did they have some quality individual players, but they played very well as a team, and you could tell the majority of that group have been together for some time. As we look forward to this weekend, we host Peebles at Duffus Park, and that's exciting for us as a club. Obviously, it being our first home game of the season. A few changes to the lineup. The back three is swapping out. We had some boys unavailable, some boys injured last weekend. So we're giving a run to 3 new boys in the back three, have a look at what they can do. We also welcome back Jamie Thompson, who has been unavailable for pre-season due to work commitments, but he should provide some extra ballast and skill set in that second row, back row department. Peebles coming off the back of a loss to GHK in what looked like some pretty horrible conditions. Playing any Borders team, always going to be tough, but I think it's a great challenge for us as a club. For us, it's about finding our feet in National 2 and giving the boys the confidence and belief that not only can they compete at this level, but we can actually thrive.
Obviously last Saturday was a disappointing performance, which led to a disappointing result against GHK in our opening league fixture at the Gates. Our attack really just didn't function in that first sort of 50 minutes. Our timings were off, our support line just didn't get to where they wanted to be, which affected our ability to kind of hold on to ball and create that platform through our possession game. But fair play to GHK, they came with a lot of energy. They produced some good attacks. They put us under a sustained amount of pressure, especially in the first half, which led to them going in the lead at half time. It really was a case of, right, we need to react, and they did react towards the end of the game. So the encouraging thing for us is we saw some of it positives from our attack coming out in that last sort of 10-12 minutes. We scored 2 good tries. So the tries are there. It's just a case of bringing that out earlier and making sure that we're not chasing games and we're putting games to bed on our terms rather than hanging on his coattails and try to chase down a point. We've been punched in the nose. It's how we react is the big thing for us now. And we've tried to generate a bit of excitement to go out and put things right against Howe of Fife, who we face this week. The new guys in this league, so a bit of an unknown. They obviously leaked a lot of points against Highland last week, but they also scored quite a few points as well. So they're obviously a team that's got an ability to score points. It's just making sure that we don't allow them this Saturday and go out and impose our attacking style on them. There'll be a few changes this week to the team. A couple of injuries picked up this week. Jack Harrison, our captain, unfortunately he's had a back problem for a couple of weeks, but it really got aggravated on Saturday there, so he'll have to rest that. And Cameron Pye went off with a knee injury, which is still getting assessed as to the extent of that, and a couple of other bumps and bruises. So we're really kind of just trying to settle on our squad for this week, but pretty similar in a lot of cases. Guys coming back in though, which is good. John Gray's available again, and Stevie Hamilton as well in the back. So so some good experienced boys to come back in and hopefully give us that impetus that we're looking for and kickstart our season up in Cooper this Saturday.
So a wounded Peebles is a dangerous one. Howe of Fife will have to look out for that, but they will be heartened by the fact that they got a try bonus at Highland, and not many clubs do that, do they?
Oh, I was going to say, Stuart, 34 points up at Canal Park. That's no mean feat. They must have something about them. Of course, they're looking to shore up the defence. They shipped a lot of points, but again, there could be a few clubs that ship a few points to Highland this season. Peebles, disappointing result at home. Jack Harrison out, that's definitely not going to help. Really rate him. Cammy Pye as well is a sore. Stevie Hamilton coming back in will help. Big game for Peebles. 1 up this season. Stuart, you don't want to be losing that many games.
Kirkcaldy against Berwick is up next. 2 teams who lost last weekend will want to put that to rights. Paul Pringle is Berwick head coach again this season, and another familiar face in charge at Kirkcaldy is Quinton Sanft.
Yes, a tough start to the season against a strong Dundee squad. But we're at home this week, which is a bonus. Berwick have always been a tough outfit through the years. Hopefully we can put up a better defensive performance than what we did last week, because we can still score some tries. It was good to come away with a bonus point up there, but a better defensive performance would be a positive note for us going forward.
This Saturday we'll take on Kirkcaldy away, which will be a very tough game, and that comes on the back of what ultimately ended up being a heavy home defeat to Falkirk on the opening game of the season. Unfortunately, it was just one of those games where we just didn't execute at all, so we were going up the hill and into the wind first half, turned 10-0 down. And to be honest, I think we kind of just expected that the points would come second half. We didn't take our 3 points when we, on the multiple opportunities we had to get the scoreboard ticking. And just that last pass, just evaded us on a number of occasions. Before we knew it, the game was away. We had 13 visits to 22 and came away with 5 points. They had 6 visits to our 22 and came away with 34. And that tells you just about, all you need to from that. So look, we're hoping to put things right this week. Unfortunately, we do have a number of senior players away, just with timing with holidays, etc. So we do have some new lads stepping in. Johnny Tate will take the loose head position. Luke Holborn's the starting hooker. In the back row, we'll have Forbes Lathanji. Ben Simmons is at 9. Duncan Hardy-Jack, Dalrymple in the centres, who've gone well all pre-season. And on the wings, we've got Tom Viner and Duncan Horsburgh. Rightly gets a start on the right wing. And then at 15, Ollie Bias. We're a strong squad there, given how many players are unavailable. We know this will be a tough tie. Kirkcaldy are a really stuffy team. We had some real ding-dong battles with them last year, with them winning probably the most important one, the Cup one. So we know it'll be a tough game. We're hoping to just get the show on the road for us, put right the wrongs from last week, move forward.
Oh, another close match in prospect there.
Yeah, I would say so. I think there's a disappointing defeat for Berwick at home. Kirkcaldy, they got a bonus point, but they shipped a few to Dundee. So as Paul said there, both will be looking to right a few wrongs, but yeah, home advantage for me in this one, Stuart.
Well, the other match in National 2 is Stuart's Melville against Dundee. Stu Mel at Inverleith, where they traditionally do very well, while Dundee beat Kirkcaldy last week 51-28. Will certainly relish the opportunity to beat Stu Mel at the old Scottish Rugby home international ground. We can get the thoughts of Dundee's Director of Rugby Colin Sangster in a minute, and also captain of Stu Mel, Jamie Sword.
Obviously not the result that we would have wanted last week for Stuart's Melville heading down to Newton Stewart. Really tough place to go at the best of times, but they controlled the game really well in adverse conditions, and we always love playing against them. And for anyone that's not had the pleasure of going down there, it's the best hospitality you'll ever experience in amateur rugby. Bus home gives a good opportunity to just get some more bonding between the team. Still lots of new faces coming in this season. Should be a relatively settled side going up against Dundee this weekend. We're fully aware of the challenges Dundee will present. They're a good team that have come down into the league this year. They'll be physical, well drilled, and we ultimately need to match them on that front. We've been really pleased with our home form in recent seasons, so that's something we're really hoping to build on and establish Inverleith as a tough place to go and a place that we like to pick up as many points as we can. The team should be relatively settled from the team that went down to Newton Stewart last week, with potentially a couple of boys coming back who were unavailable or away last weekend. Looking forward to a good competitive fixture.
Last week we got off to a good start in our National 2 League programme with a home win against Kirkcaldy. We started the game really strongly, played some good rugby for the first 30 minutes. Then Kirkcaldy came back into it, and the remainder of the game was pretty competitive, but we ended up with a convincing win, which is a great boost to confidence, because in recent years we've struggled at the start of the season and never really got into that winning habit. This week we are through in Edinburgh at Inverleith to play Stuart's Melville. That will be a really tough game away from home. They're a good side. We know some of their players, and we expect that to be a really tough game. But it would be great to build on our first victory, but we're under no illusions that we've got a hard game ahead of us on Saturday.
Good to hear Colin Sangster on the radio, and they don't come much more experience than that.
No, they don't. He's been around, Colin Sangster, and obviously, he's got Dundee off to a good start there. And I think that's really important because, they lost an awful lot of rugby matches last season, Stuart, and we've seen before there are clubs that have got on a slippery slope, and that's not happened, and they've racked up 50 points there. So, yeah, they can head into this game, Stu Mel, in good fettle. It doesn't look like a disastrous result away from home in treacherous conditions down at Newton Stewart for Stu Mel. Yeah, I think they'll be looking forward to the first home game this season. Sword, I've always thought he was a good player. He's certainly going to be a good player, in the third tier. And what a classy thing to say as well about the hospitality in Newton Stewart. Well played him.
I was just going to say, yes, that's you'd often hear that, and it's nice to hear other clubs congratulating other clubs on hospitality, because that's a big part of the game, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. You don't hear it said all that often. Now, I remember when I used to play, that was almost the biggest part of it, and you'd lay on stuff for the team that were there, and you'd hope it was reciprocated when you went elsewhere, and a lot of places it was. So no, good to hear him say that.
So a full programme of club rugby tomorrow. Our commentary game on Rugby Radio will be Melrose versus Ayr from the Green Yards, with Robin and Ian Hurd in the commentary box. Sam Matthews will be at Currie versus Heriot. Hugh Brown at Megatland for the National 1 game between Boroughmuir and Musselburgh. Ewan Welsh will be down at Netherdale for Gala against Stirling County, while Andrew Fleming will be popping into Mansfield Park to take in Hawick versus Selkirk. So a packed programme in store for you. We're on air at 2:30 all the way through till 5 o'clock. And then at 7 o'clock, our new Rugby Roundup programme, where we bring you all the results and the news from 15 games in the top 3 divisions, hearing from players and coaches. So make a note of that. Rugby Roundup on air at 7 tomorrow night.
The East League Roundup. The East League Roundup.
So for listeners in the Borders, we now bring you a look at the East Leagues involving Borders teams, and because East League 1 has 9 teams in it, Langham, it's their turn to sit it out. But in East League 2, there is a derby between Earlston and Hawick Harlequins. Earlston won promotion last season and will relish the chance to get the scalp of the Quins. Let's hear from the Quins' Liam Marshall, and first of all, the boss at Earlston, Cammy Hill.
So after all the pre-season work, we now turn our focus to competitive rugby in our first East 2 match for a few seasons now. So it's going to be a real test. What a way to start as well with a nice border derby. Obviously Quins having a really good season last season, finishing 3rd or 4th I believe it was, so they've done really well last year, and I can see them being the sort of team that'll be there or thereabouts. So this is going to put us in really good stead for how we run our season out and how we compare to these teams in a slightly higher league. Obviously we've changed a bit of a squad this season, so I think there's about 7 or 8 new guys that have came in, so we've kind of adjusted the wee bit, but I believe after our last pre-season game at Peebles there on Saturday, we're kind of getting into our shape and starting to click. So we're really looking forward to this game on Saturday, and let's see what East 2's got to bring this season.
Yeah, as a club, we're really looking forward to getting back into league rugby. Been a good time off for the squad. Unfortunately, our pre-season's probably not went to plan as much as game time's considered. With having 3 games arranged at the start of pre-season to only be able to play 1 due to 2 call-offs from the opposition. It's probably been not the best prep in terms of getting match ready. But training-wise and stuff, we've had a really good few weeks training and getting together as a squad. This season we've seen a good few new faces come through and a really young squad getting together, hopefully to go forward as a club, and just trying to improve on last season's third place finish. We know the top 2 in the league this season will be promoted, so our aim is to be up there and mixing it up with the promotion candidates. So we're really looking forward to getting it off, hopefully on a good foot in a border derby, which can't ask for more to get the boys ready. As a squad, we're looking for very good numbers for this week. Hopefully continuing that throughout the season, which is probably a downfall last season, especially towards the end of the campaign. As a squad, we're really looking forward to going ahead this week and playing up against an Earlston team that have recruited a lot as well. So really excited to see what they've got for this league coming up for East League 3. We know that there'll be a tough opposition to come up against, especially this early on. But as a squad, we feel that we can get the right prep done and hopefully go in this first week looking for a win.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how everyone does on the first day of the season in the East League. In East League 3, there's another derby between Duns and Hawick Lindeen, and we can get the lowdown on Lindeen from their president and former player, Kieran Murphy.
It's always a tough battle down there, and it is probably a difficult start for us. Just going by what Duns have been like the last season or two, and speaking to members of the club over there, that they seem they're in a very positive place as well, so it should be a tough one down there. But coming on the back of pre-season, we've had a very positive pre-season, plenty of numbers, boys putting the work in at training. We've had nearly 40 different bodies down at training over the months, and that's kind of coincided with us winning our home sevens and winning 2 tough fixtures against Kelso Sharks and North Berwick, a couple of leagues above as well. So we've had a very positive pre-season, one I'm sure the coaches are very happy with, and obviously gives us a bit of headache for this weekend. We have got 12 unavailable, which is a lot for an opening weekend, and it's one that would probably give coaches a bit of headache, but if anything, it's maybe made the coach's job a little bit easier, since they've only got 28 to select for, opposed to nearing 40. So if we want to be better, we want to do well, that everybody needs to muck in. There's obviously going to be weekends that the boys are missing out on the squad, but it's how they can get themselves back in there and how they can fight for their place, and it means that we're going to have to keep our levels up for the game if people want to keep their place. Potentially on that, we've got 8 boys that could make debuts, and we've added an extra backs coach this year, so Keith Headley as well. So as well as bringing players in, we brought in another coach as well, and obviously so far it looks like it's working, but we certainly know that Duns will be a tough battle on Saturday, and we can have as many bodies as we want, we can train as hard as we want, but if we don't put in our 90 minutes on Saturday, then the Duns will punish us, because they're certainly in a good place too, and we're expecting a very tough game down there.
Duns against Lundeen is the derby in East League 3. Well, it's been a bumper programme today. Hope you've enjoyed the insight into Scottish Club Rugby on the podcast, but that's it for today. Thanks to Robin, and from me, Stuart Cameron, bye for now.